Hey guys, Artosis here. Welcome back to ArtosisCasts. I have got a very interesting game for you here today. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that this game existed. This was played on the ladder this summer, and it is FlaSh's PROTOSS. Okay, like FlaSh's PROTOSS. There's not that many games of it, but it has looked really good so far. Going up against FantaSy. This is a match that I don't even know what to think or who to root for. Obviously, people have been very excited that FantaSy had a little period of activity this year. He ended up winning Gamers 8, which was like a pretty big deal over Bisou, Stork, and Jaedong. Played fantastically there. Has been at the very top of the ladder. Of course, right this moment, as far as we know, he is a little bit inactive. He had some other work to do in League of Legends, but did mention he may actually end up returning in 2024. Of course, FlaSh did not go for the last ASL. Apparently, he had some sort of injury, but he was over on the top of the ladder. We've seen a lot of his games. I've been casting some of them recently, but the fact that he is playing PROTOSS here against like the other best Terran of the end of the Kespa era, it's pretty impressive. I can't wait to see how this game is going to end up turning out. Anyways, FlaSh actually gets a first scout on this 4-player map and steals the gas of FantaSy. That's always a very uncomfortable thing for a Terran player to deal with, right? On 2-player maps, if you get your gas stolen, it's like, yeah, okay, I know that, but I can decide exactly when I want to scout my opponent. That is not something that you can do on a 4-player map. So, like, for instance, let's say this is a 2-player map. This goes on, and if you're like, okay, I want to see if there's a proxy gate, you're going to know where those are. Or, if you want to see, like, is he going Nexus? You can just go down and check. Here, being a 4-player map, FantaSy has no idea where FlaSh is at. FantaSy might scout down here first. We don't know, and that could really slow down the speed with which he finds FlaSh and figures out what's going on. But he will scout in the correct direction. He's sending it over to the left and will hit FlaSh's base. So good kind of lucky scouting there on both sides. FlaSh pulling out with his probe, which has gone very low before those Marines come out. FantaSy wanting to deal with this ASAP. And FlaSh, his Zealot going to come out. Get a couple hits. That's actually pretty nice on this SCV right away. And as FantaSy comes up, a probe really dogging him very, very hard here. It looks like both sides really want to go for a fast expansion. So looks like we have FantaSy go down, and he throws down the engineering bay. As soon as he saw no gas here, he knows that you're trying to save up for a Nexus. So throws that down, kind of nice. In the meantime, over here, the first Zealot is approaching. Of course, with the second Zealot coming out, FlaSh is going to be able to get rid of that engineering bay. Now, out comes the 3 Marines that have been made so far. 4th Marine coming out, and he's going to have to actually get a bunker up immediately. And I think he's actually going to have this up literally just in the nick of time. He knows exactly when that Zealot left here. So he is going to have this finish like right before the Zealot gets here, and he has an extra SCV for blocking as well. Nice micro there from FlaSh, and from FantaSy rather. Sorry, I'm used to the great Terran player being FlaSh here, but in this case, FantaSy blocks. FlaSh loses his Zealot without any real damage there, and the game goes on. So quite a bit of back and forth in that early game. Who's ahead after FlaSh's gas rush? Let's see, his Nexus is about halfway done. FantaSy's command center is actually slightly further along. Honestly, I like the position here of FantaSy a little bit more. Okay, he's got a bunker with 4 Marines. The Cybernex core is not quite done for FlaSh, who is adding a second gateway. Not surprised to see that. He knows just how slow that factory is going to be. So I think FlaSh has the idea here of going range and putting heavy pressure on the bunker. That'll force siege mode out of FantaSy. But yeah, I think FantaSy has basically blocked everything very well. And as you can see, the worker count. I think that's one of the big things to look at in Terran versus PROTOSS as to who's ahead or what kind of position that they're in. And anytime you see Terran slightly ahead in workers, that's generally very good for Terran. Because there's a lot of ways where PROTOSS can actually end up in workers. So yeah, both sides going to be consistently making those. They should stay within just a couple workers of each other here, probably for quite some time. 2 factories going down here for FantaSy. You know, very standard stuff, right? You get your gas stone, you make a command center, you're always going to follow it up with 2 factories, even if you want to get siege mode. Second gas finishing up here, going to go ahead and start mining that right away. Dragoons piling out here for FlaSh, who is getting that range upgrade as well. So yeah, he's definitely going to be putting on some pressure onto that bunker. That's like the only reason you'd go for the 2-gate goon here. I mean, it can be used defensively as well, but it makes a lot of sense to force your opponent to go siege. And in fact, you can see FantaSy, he's not even screwing around. He's going to get siege immediately, getting tank as well. And of course, with both the gases going, he can afford whatever he wants, whether it's going to be vulture upgrades, mass siege tank. We don't really know quite yet, but also getting that engineering base. So just being super, super safe here against FlaSh. Robotics on the way. Very standard follow-up. The Dragoons coming over, and they do want to put a little bit of pressure here. The range upgrade is almost done. The range upgrade for Dragoons does take quite some time to finish, so it seems like he's not going to be able to put as much pressure on as I initially thought. Like, FantaSy got that siege super, super fast, so yeah, it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to do too much. You can see FantaSy leaving an SCV here as well. This is just in case you run ahead with all your units. Like, he knows there's zealots out there. Occasionally you see a PROTOSS that just gathers everything and runs right up to the bunker and tries to kill it immediately. And that can screw up the Terran defense a lot. But FantaSy is like perfectly defended if we take a look. Look at these beautiful turrets, 3 tanks, 4 Marines in a bunker. He's adding 2 more factories right now. So going pretty heavily into a push for later on. Missile turrets going up in the main base, completely safe. Let's look at FlaSh. He's going up to 4 gates right now. Citadel and Stargate. Oh, here is that move I was talking about, by the way. Just runs up and trying to get a quick kill. You know, the Zealots basically tank for the bunker for the most part, and maybe a siege hit or 2. So he loses those. He loses a goon. He takes some damage. And honestly, he only got 1 siege tank. So right now, this looks very FantaSy favored. Definitely thinking that he is going to have a big edge here. Now, piling on those depots, making nothing but vultures, definitely the right play. 4 gate for FlaSh. He's going to have to produce really consistently here. I'm actually quite interested to see if he tries to do anything fancy like a scout, because he has to know that this is super deadly what's coming up. Now, he does have the Templar archives finishing, so there's a chance he actually just makes a couple of Dark Templars. We don't actually have scans yet, right? We don't even have the Academy on the way, so there's actually a chance that he just blocks everything with a couple DTs. Now, vultures run around the army here of FlaSh, try to get up into the main base. FantaSy, you know, always known for that good vulture harassment. In this particular case, FlaSh has more than enough sitting back here. Yeah, it looks like he'll take like 1 mine hit. Oh my god, but during that, it looks like FlaSh actually traded for 3 of the 4 tanks, and the other tank is at 1 goon hit. So actually, that was a great trade by FlaSh. While he was defending this, somehow he killed off those tanks. So this is actually turned bad for FantaSy. Like, if he has, let's say, 3 tanks here, I'm still liking his position. But now with just 1 siege tank, well, you know, he's checking. He's like, okay, do you have any expansions that I can run around and kill? I like that he's moving with his whole army. Vultures all over the place. But you need siege tanks to actually deal with Dragoons. So at this point, both of them on 2 bases. Similar worker count still, a little bit ahead there for FlaSh. FlaSh going for the 2-base Arbiter build, adding a lot of gateways here. I'm sure that he'll make a Nexus at this point. You would never leave it beyond this time. This is a super late 3rd Nexus. You know, we've definitely had a lot of action so far this game. But yeah, it's kind of funny to see how long it's taking these guys to expand anymore. Now, FantaSy is setting up outside of his base and taking this as his 3rd. I've seen this before from FantaSy on Polypoid. It seems like a weird move because this is so far out there. It's not a super good defendable position, but he's got like this zoning area so he can quickly get up here. And the vultures, as you see, they're laying a path of mines. They're keeping some vision. You can see these mines in the center of the map. These are watching as well. FantaSy does such, I'm like actually getting chills while I talk about this. He does such a good job of laying mines everywhere, of putting vultures everywhere, that he can take expansions like this. And you see this from almost no Terrans. Almost every single Terran on Earth, including the pro gamers, will take this as their third. FantaSy wants this as his third. And so, yeah, like just having those mines up, it's like, okay, well, Flash, you can try to attack here, but he's going to see your general army movement and be able to move his army up to counter that. So really beautiful play here from FantaSy. Getting those +1 upgrades. He's also getting into his starport to continue upgrades further. Flash, in the meantime, has his third Nexus finishing. He does have the Arbiters popping out at this point, getting stasis upgrade, a lot of Zealots. He has a good gateway count right now. But he's going to have to take a very good engagement against FantaSy, I think. You know, I think we're back in the spot where I like FantaSy's position a bit more. Look at this. He's got a bunker. He's putting up some turrets, a little depot wall here. Like, this is some awesome play from FantaSy. I love his zoning. One thing I've noticed about FantaSy, by the way, as I study more and more of his games, he stays on 5 fact for a long time. Most players would have added 2 more factories by now, and he actually has the money to do it. So maybe just like a little error from his side, right? Like you can see the bank. So maybe that's something that he can fix up. He's always been kind of like a flashy Terran, not known specifically for macro, but more for big brain moves and cool builds. But yeah, if he can add those 2 factories, going to look a lot better for him. Flash right now moving into position. Looks like he wants to take the high ground. You know, clear the mines at least. I don't think he's going to, like, he can't attack. This is such a good setup from FantaSy. It is such a scary setup as well. But, you know, if Flash wants to put his whole army up here, you can't really push up super easily. You might want to, like, poke the army and try to see if you can get... you know, Flash to actually attack down. And Flash actually decides, you know what, we are going to attack down. Kind of crazy. That is a great stasis there. So many Zealots coming in against FantaSy right now. Oh my God, Flash has so much, but FantaSy's setup is so strong. I think he's just going to hold it, honestly. The Zealot's taking a lot of splash damage there from the tanks. Still a lot of vultures remain. Oh my God, but he is breaking through. Look at that. Even that bottom siege tank having some Zealots split off onto it. And Flash is going to trade his entire army here for the entire army of FantaSy. And FantaSy not on that many factories. It's going to take him a while to remake that. It looks like still the Zealots being sent in here by Flash. Going after some of these SCVs now. Tried to hit that armory, that didn't really work. Brings up another rally of Zealots and gets on top of the siege tanks that were stasis. So we'll kill those as they come out. Oh my God, he's going to dive again on top of these siege tanks. If he can kill these, this is a big moment for Flash in this game. Looks like he'll end up getting 1, but that is going to be it. Can't get any more. The Observer gets sacked into the main base. I think he sees that this is not a great place to recall. These are some of the best laid mines that I've seen. But yeah, so there you have it. Flash does that massive attack. I didn't think he was going to. It looked like such a good defensive spot, but a perfect break there from Flash. And moves like that are PROTOSS favored. That's actually what you want to do, is trade out and kill their siege tank count. During that, Flash has set up a 4th base location. It looks like he wants more. A probe coming down to take a 5th in this area. FantaSy has covered that bottom left with the Vulture and a couple mines, so going to be a little bit harder to expand there. Looking at FantaSy's spot. Okay, he's getting Science Vessels. Good. He's got 2 add-ons. So that's going to take a while. Honestly, with the 3rd gas, I would really like to see a 3rd add-on by FantaSy. He is finally adding those additional facts as well, finally going up to 8 factories here, that's like what you need, basically. You need 7 if you're taking a quick 4th base, and you can do 8 if you're just kind of macroing on 3 bases. But would love to see that. Goliath range on the way, EMP on the way. Important stuff there for FantaSy. In Flash's base, we can see just consistent Arbiter production. He did save that 1 Arbiter that was in the battle. He does have double Forge going as well. Arbiter energy coming up. Wants to be able to spawn them with more energy, as well as maybe use double spell like Recall plus, plus Stasis. Little Vulture raid up here. The 2 cannons will eventually force him back, but FantaSy trading a few Vultures there to kill a few probes. keeping that probe count actually pretty low. Okay, the current metagame for worker counts, PROTOSS, it's mid-60s in this matchup. 54 is low for PROTOSS. So yeah, and you will see some PROTOSSes go above that into the 70s. And that's going to be like kind of a lot of bases out. Now, hold on. We have a recall coming in. Flash going to recall Fantasy. Never thought I'd say those words. Flies right in over the turrets. Obviously, it's going to be able to get it off. That is a gigantic recall. Oh my God. Flash going after the armory. Oh, he's going to stop the +2 attack, I think, just barely. Does he? Yeah, he stopped +2 attack. The Zealots trying to deal as much damage as they can, running forward. And as those Zealots get cleaned up, these Dragoons are not going to last very long. So was this a good recall by Flash as he gets everything cleaned up? Well, unit-wise, he lost a huge chunk of his army and killed very little army. Stopping +2 is pretty big. That is going to cost Fantasy some time. He has to reset up turrets. He has to relay mines in here as well. But I think that Fantasy is actually completely fine after that, honestly. Because again, you know, we are low on workers. We're in the mid-50s instead of the mid-60s. So when you're trading out an army like that, you can see they're both kind of stuck at that mid-supply. That's a more normal place for Terran to be. But when you're doing those suicide recalls, if they don't do a lot of damage in there, then you need a big economy so that you can try to re-max out as quickly as is possible. Now, that being said, we have the 5th base up for Flash at this point, and it's got decent saturation. You can see he's really sending his probes around really masterfully. That's probably the best saturation. Honestly, like jumping around to the bases, he's done it just right as far as the probe counts. That is awesome to see. Like, Flash is balancing his economy very, very well. How PROTOSS can you get? Expanding to 6 o'clock here. What a move from Flash. Gonna hide a base. And we'll see if that ends up working out for him. So right now, let's zoom out a little bit and try to put this game in perspective, right? So Flash has this whole quadrant. He has all the easy to get bases, and then he has a hidden base down here. For Fantasy, oh God, another recall goes in, but doesn't look like it's going to do well again. Yeah, getting cleaned super, super fast. Really well-placed siege tanks here. Kind of interesting building placement. This looks like anti-Reaver building placement, but it seems like he's kind of utilizing it for stopping Dragoons as well, right? Instead of having like big giant walls, he has like these smaller areas and puts mines in them. Really kind of cool to see. But yeah, anyways, I feel like this is pretty good for Fantasy still. He does drop down on workers. He's at just 49, and that is kind of low. His upgrades got killed, right? Let's not forget that. He had +2 like a second from finishing when that died. That would be a lot better if he had it. But he's taking his 4th base here, and he's going to be able to start pushing across the map. And the thing is, Flash doesn't have a whole lot of tools, right? He's got a lot of PROTOSS units. He's got a few Arbiters with good energy in them. But that's it. That's it. He needs to make these Arbiters work. And if he can kill this army, absolutely he can win this game. But Fantasy has the better army right now, without any question. He has more army supply. He has more flexibility with it. It packs a bigger punch. And here we go. Up come these Arbiters. That is a huge stasis right there. The Zealots running through that cloud of Vultures. Stasis is more siege tanks. But again, the Vulture count is so gigantic here. Not that many tanks left unfrozen. But where's everything else? He's losing this base during this. And I tell you what, Flash has some great PROTOSS. But without question, Fantasy has outplayed him in this game. Pushing forward right now, breaking through the rest of those reinforcements. Flash calls GG, and Fantasy takes out Flash's Terran. I mean, PROTOSS.